Hello everyone. If you're a teacher like me that teaches classes that are kind of project-based and hands-on and use a lot of different tools and software that you have available in your classroom, you might be struggling a bit with what to do with your students now that we're, in a lot of cases, not in our classrooms any longer. I teach mostly engineering classes that are pretty heavily focused on computer-aided design, and I've got some access to tools that are really kind of cool in the classroom, things like laser cutters and 3D printers. But obviously now, with having to teach from home, this is going to be a little bit different. I've got enough activities so far that I've been able to figure out where we're going to do some good sketching exercises and get some ideas, and the timing worked out okay on that. But going forward, there's not a lot else that I can do that's going to be valuable and engaging for the kids. I want to make sure that what I assign them to do is not just busy work. And so I was kind of going through the process of what can I add, what can I do, what can be interesting for the students, be engaging, and I don't know, something that might be kind of fun to do. One of the things that I like to do in my class are these one-day activities where you go and you just sort of throw some materials out and you give them a kind of a crazy challenge, and they build things. Sometimes it's individual, sometimes it's not. Everybody who's been around teaching for like tech ed or science or things like that has probably heard of like the paper tower or the spaghetti challenge, the spaghetti and marshmallow challenge. Same kind of thing. I thought, well, that'd be kind of fun. But then I realized we don't have access to the same materials. When I'm in the classroom, I have the ability of giving out, every group gets the same materials, the same number of sheets of paper, same type of paper, same amount of tape, that type of stuff. How can I guarantee equal access to things? And the honest answer is I can't. There's some kids that may not have paper at home. They may not even have a printer. I realized when I came home that I didn't have a functioning printer at home. I just don't print things at home anymore. Why? I don't use it. So how do you overcome that challenge of how do you find a common material that could be used that every kid can probably come up with? And as what usually happens when you're thinking things through, this morning I was in the shower and it came to me. Why don't I use something that every family gets? Junk mail. Okay? We all get it. Almost everybody. I would say it's probably pretty hard pressed to find a family in the United States that doesn't get junk mail. Are there some? Absolutely. But the reality is most kids will have access to some level of junk mail. So why don't we use junk mail as our materials? It goes in the trash anyway. Okay, so think of that. What I was thinking of doing is saying, okay, well, let's do a paper tower exercise. You have your junk mail. There's a couple of things that we have to kind of think through here. There's a lot of benefits to this. Most people are going to have junk mail. The activities that you can do with it they're pretty numerous. Say paper towers. You could do boats. You can do bridges. There's all sorts of different things that you could do. This is something that can be done at almost all age levels. Elementary school all the way up through high school. You have appropriate criteria and constraints for each group level or each age level, and it's something that's kind of fun. It would definitely involve a lot of critical thinking. I like to, in my classes, we're emphasizing the engineering design process when we do this, and that's a big deal. If you think about it, they have the ability to do some brainstorming. If we're going to do towers, for example, they have to brainstorm how they're going to build their tower, all of those types of things. And then they go through the process of prototyping. They can go through the process of building and then iteration, reevaluating, working through that process. Okay. Now, there are going to be a few issues you have to think about. First thing is I would say that when you do this, if you were to do it, you want to make sure that the junk mail you're using is actually junk. So the first thing is you have to make sure the students are not just running over to the parents' bill pile, grabbing whatever's on top, and start going to town. Okay. Obviously, it has to be very clear that the assignment is junk mail and that the parents need to be informed up front. We want the stuff that you're going to throw away. Some folks are really good about tossing it right as soon as they get it. Other places, not so much. My family, we tend to build a big pile of it, then we get rid of it all at once. So maybe they're going to have to use a little bit of time to build up some junk mail if their parents know they need it. But you definitely want to make sure that the parents are aware, so that way they're not grabbing the wrong mail. The other thing is privacy issues. I would say that any assignment that you give, and any assignment I'm giving, is not going to be brought into the school. The most that I would want is a video or a picture of whatever the item is, the tower or whatever, but I don't want it to be anything that will have identifiable information. So either cut off the labels or black them out. Do what you need to do to make sure that there's no personal information on this, especially if the pictures or videos are going to get posted to a publicly accessible website. You want to make sure that that privacy type stuff is taken care of. Okay. The other thing that you have to realize is there's different things that come in junk mail. I've received all sorts of weird things in junk mail. You get little fake plastic credit cards. You get, things like that. I for some reason, well, maybe because I have woodworking magazines, I get a whole bunch of, once or twice a year, I should say, I get drill bit indexes. They're hard plastic that have holes that show the different sizes of drill bits. I have one. If you received one, you've received more than you ever need. But things like that come in the junk mail. You need to have some rules. Is that stuff available, or is it only the paper? You need to make sure that you set those ground rules ahead of time and say, okay, am I going to do just this, just the paper itself, or is it going to be anything that comes in? And I think anything that comes in would be kind of neat. Now, I received one thing of junk mail today. When I opened it up, it had a whole bunch of return address labels. Some people love those things. My wife loves them, so they were off limits. But some people don't care about them. Well, they're tape, basically. So that could be something that is used in the project. Now, where that runs into maybe some issues is the fact that not every kid's going to have the same amount or the same type. That's okay if you think of it from the aspect of we're having the students work with what they have available to you, the resources they have available. They want to use those critical thinking skills to utilize those resources as best they can. Now, the other thing that I look at is I think this is a great family involvement type project. Anytime I would want to assign this, and I'm looking at this for the next couple of weeks, anything that I would assign, I'd say the family is more than welcome to help out. Let's everybody learn. There's nothing saying that the student and only the student has to do this. Go ahead, get mom, get dad, get the siblings involved. In some families that might be a really good thing. In some families, we don't know the kid's situation. Maybe they prefer to go by themselves. But it's just an option that the student has, and it's one way that they can go through the process of the engineering design process or other things and build something getting away from a screen. I think that's a big deal. You go through the process of building this, they're not staring at a screen. They're having to stare at their junk mail. Okay. Then you have to think about other criteria and constraints when you're building these. You always want to give out a nice clear list of what are your expectations. For example, with my high school students, I would have some very clear criteria and constraints that I would list out. Things like no extra tape, no extra materials. Whatever you get in your junk mail, that's what you can use. So if it comes in the envelope, that's what you can use. Okay, that means no paper clips unless it came in, no binder clips, anything like that. Help, I'm all for having the family. I already said that. Okay, and then you have to build up some project-specific type things. So paper tower, for example. I would say go for the tallest freestanding paper tower that you can build out of your junk mail. No taping it to the floor, no taping it to anything. It has to stand on its own. That's why it's freestanding, and anybody that's done this activity knows that kids will interpret freestanding very differently. You have to be very clear. You want to have a time limit or a time minimum for having it freestanding. I like to use 20 seconds. I think within 20 seconds, if it can stand for 20 seconds on its own, that's a pretty reasonable design. Some kids will hold something up and let go of it, and they'll say, look, it stood. And then not even a second later, it falls over. No, it didn't stand. So you got to have a time limit. You got to have say how long. Okay. You want to make sure that you explain how you can modify the materials. Some people will say, well, you can't cut. You can only fold. I'm open season. Use whatever you want. You can use scissors if you want. You can cut materials. You can do whatever you want. Your only constraint for materials is what you can get out of your junk. Okay. And then for me specifically, any project that is turned in can have no visible address labels on it. I don't care if they're even blacked out. I don't want to see it. And for the high school level, I can make pretty specific things like that. Now, for lower levels, you might want to be a little more flexible on that. But I want to say this is a very specific thing. I want to make sure that there's no privacy issues there. And it's also good, especially at the upper levels, to have some constraints that are a little bit more difficult to achieve, maybe. It makes them actually think about how they're putting their materials together and how they're going through the process of assembling their tables or assembling their towers in this case, or how they're laying things out. Okay, and so those clear criteria and constraints are really, really important. The other thing is some of your evaluation is going to be based on those criteria and constraints. And so online, you may or may not be actually using this for a grade. It may be more of a learning activity that's not necessarily something that's going to go in the grade, but it's certainly something that you can use. Okay, you can obviously, paper tower, you can always say, hey, whatever's the highest. So most kids will probably have access to some sort of measurement device that they can measure it. You can understand, we all make adjustments for that. The other thing that you could do, though, is you have something like a kitchen scale. You could say, okay, well, how much does it weigh? And then, what's the lightest tower out there that is a minimum height? Or you say, well, what's the ratio of how high versus how much it weighs? Go for things like that. Those are types of things that you can do to kind of ramp up the difficulty a little bit, or at least give them a bar they have to achieve. One of the things that I also like to do is I do a little bit of competition in it. I have stickers for my classes. So this is my Bozeman High School Engineering logo here. I have stickers for those, and kids like stickers, quite honestly. So I give out stickers for winners. If you get something that's achievable or something that's really well done, hand them a sticker for it. And you may not always give out the sticker for the tallest. It may be most unique design. It may be the one that has, who knows, the weirdest features. Whatever it is. Now, do you have to stop with towers and papered bridges and boats? No, you can do all sorts of things. There's all sorts of stuff that's available out there. It's just a matter of whatever you can think of. And to me, I look at this as if this is going to go in the recycling bin anyway, we may as well get some educational use out of it. Something that will engage our kids a little bit more, and maybe even engage the families a little bit and teach them things. The other thing is, depending on your subject matter, you might be able to use it for a little more direct instruction. If you're building trusses, you can have kids build trusses out of the thicker cardstock that comes. Maybe they're going to fold things. You can talk about how you can fold pieces. There's a million different ways that you can use this material. And the beauty of it is, tomorrow you're going to get more of it. So anyway, this is my idea on how you can utilize something a little bit out of the ordinary for your teaching. Hopefully it's something that you find interesting. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments below. I'll try to keep up with that. And thanks for watching.